Hi guys, big thank you for joining us. Well, if you're intrigued about full-time travel in Europe, whether you're in a camper van, motorhome or overland truck, then stick with us as we share our tips and what we've learnt along the way. We're the Gapticators, Phil and Izzy. In 2018, we sold our house and all our possessions for life on the road. Since then, we've been exploring Europe and Asia by motorhome and now in our truck Tonka. Join us on our travels as we endeavour to explore the world, and for those weekly updates, please consider liking, subscribing and hitting that bell notification. But enough of me talking, let's get on the road. Well, morning guys. Well, just making a cup of tea. I like a cup of tea first thing in the morning, but we've woken up to the most incredible morning this morning. I'm just going to show you this gorgeous river that we're parked beside. Oh, and it's absolutely spectacular. So we're just catching up on a little bit of administration this morning. In fact, Izzy is at the laptop as we speak. Izzy, what are you up to?
Well, I spent most of yesterday looking at insurance for the truck. It's always a bit of a job trying to sort it out, but I've just come off the phone to Sterling Insurance. They were super helpful. They're really interested in what we're doing. They didn't ask loads of questions about who built the truck, and they told me that they insure lots of weird and wonderful truck and van conversions. So we've decided to go with them, so I can tick that off my list of things to do.
Excellent.
Yeah.
So we had a video call last night with some people we've been in contact with for a little while about full timing, and we've had a number of these conversations with various people, and we're in our 5th year and we've had motorhomes and obviously we're in the truck, and we thought, you know what, let's do a little video on full timing in Europe, because that's what we know. So what we've done is we've just written down a couple of notes, and we've got a little list here of a few points that we think are sort of relevant to living full-time in Europe.
Come on then, push up. I've got to get my 2-penny worth in.
Yeah, I knew you'd do that. I knew you wouldn't be able to help yourself.
Of course not. Oh.
So, do you know what? I can't even read your writing. You've got doctor's writing.
I'll have to take that as a compliment.
Okay. Anyway.
Dr. Nichols.
Okay. Later. Go on then.
Well, probably the first thing I would say that we also said to our friends last night was, it's not like it's like on Instagram. Life just isn't like that. It has to carry on as normal. You still have to do all the dirty jobs. You still have to get rid of the poo. Yeah. And you might have an amazing park up, and you might have the most incredible view, but equally you could be behind a supermarket in the car park in the rain.
And there's a place for that.
Yeah, sometimes you just need a place to sleep.
Yeah. So
not every night is like it is on Instagram. I think that's probably...
Yeah.
And I don't want to start off on a negative point, but I think it's really important for people to understand that, because...
It swings and roundabouts, because sometimes you can have, truly epic park-ups. Depending on the country you're in, every country's got something to offer, but I would say we've had some really, really outstanding park-ups.
It's not been another person for miles.
They just blew you away.
Yeah.
And you feel privileged.
Yeah. But equally, we have slept behind supermarkets. We had one night in a truck stop, which was really bad.
Yeah, we had refrigeration units going all night.
Yeah.
Then you got barking dogs, you've got cockerels, the other night we're in a car park, and somebody actually, 5 o'clock in the morning, 20 past 5 in the morning, somebody actually
reversed into us.
Nudged the back of us, actually the van reversed into us. Couldn't believe it.
Not how you want to get woken up.
First time that's ever happened.
So yeah, so that just sort of sets the scene, I suppose.
Yeah, I do think people have a sort of a very romantic vision of living the van life or the motorhome, whatever you're in. It doesn't really matter what you're in.
Yeah.
It's it's not always idyllic.
No.
Anyway, that's really positive, isn't it?
Isn't it? But what are the positives, I suppose, that come from it? The freedom. Yeah, absolutely. Yeah. The fact that we've seen so many countries now that we would never have seen if we hadn't have been on the road.
I think the beauty is as well, and even if you've got different interests, like we have, I like to sort of get out and hike and enjoy nature and be outdoors. Izzy's probably more of a I wouldn't say you're a city person, but you enjoy the city visit.
I like the liveliness of it. I think when we go to a city, I like the contrast between that and being in the absolute wilderness.
So you've got the beauty of being able to sort of dip into a city for a day, maybe 2 days maximum for me, and then head back out into the mountains, the coast, whatever your thing is. And if you're into outdoor sports, any of that, of course you can really embrace that and enjoy it.
Yeah.
And the weather's a big factor. You can sort of up your house and sort of, move south or move north if it's too warm.
If you don't like it, if you want to chase the sun or...
Yeah.
I think probably for me though, the biggest single most positive thing about being on the road has been the people that we've met. We lived in a little village in Wiltshire for 6 years, and we knew our neighbours to say hello to, and that was about it. We've met more people who would be friends with for life on this journey. When I say journey, I mean metaphorical journey, than we ever did when we were at work, doing the sort of 6 a.m. till 8 o'clock at night type of job.
All nationalities.
And people, I suppose part of the biggest thing is you meet like-minded people. You're in a little spot like this, which there's a few campers around, and you meet people who you've got stuff in common with, and it's great to catch up with people, to share the stories, to chew the fat, to have a social now and again, with people who enjoy doing the same things that you enjoy.
But on that note as well, I think it's quite educational. I think it's really, really humbling and eye-opening when you go to different countries, especially sort of closer, sort of third world countries. You go, and we've met people. People have been intrigued. People said hello, and they're not motorhomers or van lifers, any of that, but yet there's an intrigue. There's here's my telephone number. Do you need anything? Can we help you? We've had, I mean, honestly, so many people who have gone out of the way to help us, or even if we didn't need help, give us food, give us produce. And you think, well, would that happen in the UK? Would it happen in Western Europe? Generally,
probably not.
No. And so it's and you get these little moments, and it makes it really special.
Yeah, it does. I think that's probably for me been a real defining thing of being on the road.
Yeah. Right, hold on. I need to put my glasses on because I can't read anything. So it's a good point actually. And here we are. It's autumn, and the point we made was, when you live full time in a space, it doesn't matter if it's a tiny van or we're in a truck, and it still isn't massive. You have got you've got a space to live in, and it's pretty small. It's not a house, and you've got to make it work. And so you've just got to sort of here we are coming into the winter months. It gets dark sort of earlier. The weather's closing in a little bit, and there's compromises, there's tolerance levels that have to be managed. There's you have a Barney, of course you have a Barney, and so it's a big deal. And people quite often say, God, how do you do it? How do you spend? Because we do spend pretty much all day together. How do you spend that length of time together? Not just month after month, but year after year. And
we're lucky that we like each other.
Yeah, we do, and that's really important. But it takes time as well, because you have to go through the process of having those fallouts and those understandings and conversations and saying, okay, let's do it this way, and so. I
think what I've written here is no escape. That's quite hard for me. If we have a little fallout, there's nowhere to go. Not really, and. That's been quite difficult at times. I think we're sort of over the worst of that now, but it has taken a few years to get there, to get used to being in that sort of confined space.
You've got to be a good communicator.
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah.
Okay. What else have we got on the list?
Oh, you make me put my glasses on again.
Sorry, no, it's okay. Being away from family. Yeah, I think this is something that we talked with our friends about last night actually, because one of them wants to be able to go back and see her mum on a regular basis, and I think we've felt this year, certainly when we've been, we had the COVID years and that was difficult anyway, but when we've been in places like Georgia and Armenia and Turkey, it would be okay for me to travel home, but if something happened to touch wood, if Phil needed to get home, that would be harder, because when you temporarily import a vehicle into these countries, you can't just leave it there. We had some friends on bikes who got fined €1,000 for leaving their bikes in Turkey.
Because the vehicle's associated with me,
Yeah.
because the vehicle document's in my name. And so when you come in and you import the vehicle, be it that it's a temporary import, it's when you leave the country, you have to leave with the vehicle. So when you don't leave with the vehicle and you come back in again, you get a fine.
And even if you can get home, there is an associated cost around flights and so on. And potentially, if both of you go, having to find safe storage for whatever vehicle you're in. And that's weighed quite heavily on me this year because our parents are in their 80s. They're all fit and healthy at the moment, but they are still in their 80s. That's been quite hard. So that's just something I suppose you need to think about, really. I didn't think about it when I set off, and I think it's taken 4+ years on the road for me to recognise how important home actually is.
Yeah. Two things there. One was COVID, and we were fortunate enough to spend our time in Spain, but nonetheless, you're still away from family. Yeah. And then, of course, you're away for this year. It's a pretty big trip, big effort this year, across to the Caucasus, and of course, for pretty much a year, we won't have seen our family. Our kids came out. 2 of our 3 kids came out in September, and that was great.
We actually had a holiday, which was lovely.
Yeah. So again, it's about mechanisms, putting those mechanisms in place and plans in place to try and have that workaround. Yeah. Whether it's grandchildren, we've met a lot of people with, maybe our age, and they've got grandchildren, and they sort of then feel, we're actually going away to this country because it's easy to get back.
I think it's fair to say though, when we first set off, when we sold the house and bought the motorhome and said, okay, we're going off to see the world, we didn't ever cost into our budget the need to get home. We just didn't even think about it really, and so the cost of that has come as some surprise. So yeah, it's just worth knowing, I suppose, that if you want to get back and see family, that put it into the budget. And see how cleverly I did that. We're now going to segue into talking about costs. I can see it on the list without my glasses.
Okay.
Just to say, really costs have gone through the roof in the last year. So once again, the budget that we had, that we thought we could manage with, hasn't really been enough. When we first said we would go to Turkey, I think it was 56p for a litre of fuel, and it's now 120. And I recognise that's way lower than Europe. We know that. Now we're in Romania, and it's like 180. But still, that was more than double what we thought that we would have to pay. And now we're back in Europe as well. We did our first Lidl shop the other day, and suddenly the price of things has clearly gone up. You can see that. Things that we felt that you might want to know about if you're embarking on a full-time life in a motorhome, in a truck, in a camper van, however.
Things will always cost more than you anticipate.
Yeah.
And there's little unforeseens, be it a mechanical sort of issue or a getting home or whatever it is. You need to have a little slush fund. And I would say the slush fund probably needs to be sort of cash, or you need to have access to that cash slush fund, particularly if it's for mechanical works. Quite often places, maybe not so much sort of mainland Europe, Western Europe, but certainly other countries are very cash based. What else in cost? Because it's the biggest question, probably the biggest question that people ask us about. Not just how do we afford it, but what about this, what about that? And we've had, maybe we're just a little bit complacent to it now.
I think so. I think one of the things you probably need to think about, if you haven't already started your trip, is connectivity. It used to be so easy. When we first started, we were still in the EU. We could use our minutes and our texts and our data in Europe without any problem. And then even after they said they wouldn't make any changes, they made loads of changes. And so now we have masses of data, but it's capped at the amount that we can use every month. But we're not allowed to travel for more than 2 months at a time before they deem us permanent travellers. So that has meant that we've had to buy data cards all over Europe And Turkey and Georgia. And I mean, it's incredible. You can go to Georgia and you can have unlimited data for a month for about £7. As we're heading back west now, back to the UK, it's getting gradually more and more expensive with each country we go into. And you might not use a lot of data. And you'd probably be able to get really good deals. For us, we use a lot of data because we're doing YouTube and the website and so on. And so at the moment, the average cost of data in Europe is about £1 for a gigabyte. And we're using upwards of 150 gig a month. So it's expensive. So just before you set off, have a look at what you could perhaps do in the UK. There are some really good schemes out there at the moment. But yeah, it's just worth having that awareness.
So a big part of being on the road, obviously, is where you stop every night. And, you know, I know it's quite a sort of an issue. Some people don't like the, well, free camp, call it what you will, basically not stay on a campsite or an air. And so I know it's one of those points, particularly in Europe, people say, oh yeah, what about this? Is it safe? Where do you find places? How do you manage that? And so for us, we use a number of apps. I mean, one of the apps that probably the most common app actually is Park4Night, and it's a superb resource. And we use it a lot. We also use iOverlander, Camper Contact. There's a couple out there, but equally we sometimes think, right, we're in a gorgeous place. Where can we stop? And I might jump on Google Maps, Google Earth, and we try and scope somewhere out. In fact, the place we've just found that we're sat on now, we just sort of find there's a river there's got to be somebody to park up. And so we just found it. And we'll put it on Park4Night. And of course, that's how it works. And so for us, we love to wild camp, and it's our go-to. And not everyone's comfortable with that, so you've got to sort of think, right, actually there's a big factor there in terms of cost if you want to go into a campsite every night or an air. So you might want to get yourself an Axie card for out of season.
I'd say the campsites in Europe are definitely cheaper than in the UK. And you've got a variety of sites, so it's not always a campsite. It could be an air.
Yeah. They're
probably about half the price of campsites. Not quite so nice, but do you know what? We've stayed in some fantastic airs, actually.
We have.
But I think it's worth thinking about before you set off, because if you want to wild camp, you might want to think about your solar capacity so that you've got enough power and so on. And you can find lots of information about that on the website.
And every country has, not every country, but most countries have a scheme, so it might be France Passion, it might be Portugal Easy Camp, it might be, there's a number of, Stelplas, you've got a number of schemes out there that you can also utilise. So it's just understanding what is out there, in the specific country you're in. Anything else on that?
No, but I think I probably just want to say, we've talked a lot about the challenges of life on the road, but the reality is, I mean, we love this life and we wouldn't want to do anything else. And I think it's changed us for the better. It's got us out of that sort of trap of thinking that we need to live in a big house and have fancy cars and make loads of money. I don't think we've ever been more content, really. Yeah, it's not always easy, but life isn't always easy. But doing it in a truck and being in a different place most days and seeing the world is, life-changing, really.
Incredible.
And I would just want to say that if you are thinking about doing something like this, you're thinking about going full-time and you're not sure, drop us a line, contact us on Facebook or Instagram. We're happy to have a chat, always.
We've had some great questions over the years. But, it's usually about money. It's sort of the $1 million question, so
How much does it cost?
That's a biggie.
Yeah.
And understandably, it's not free. So yeah, by all means, drop us a line and let's have a chat.
And I think we will do something about costs at some point in the not too distant future.
Yeah.
So.
Anything else?
I think that's.
I can't read your writing, so I'm struggling. It's not my glasses.
I think it's your eyesight, so they're not my writing.
Okay. Right.
Well, if you liked that, please click the button to subscribe.
And leave us a comment, give us a thumbs up, and we'll see you next time.
Take care. Bye.
Bye.